The Dallas Cowboys beat the Las Vegas Raiders on Saturday night 27-12. And all of a sudden, if you listen to certain people, the Dallas Cowboys are on their way. Trey Lance is much improved. He's going to take Dak Prescott's place, and he's the future. Deuce Vaughn looks like a great running back, and he is going to be the running back of the future. The running game is fixed. Mike Zimmer is here, and from what we saw, we're going to have the #1 defense in football. We have so many questions answered in one preseason game. I'm sorry, did anyone hear I said preseason game? Let's talk Cowboys. We're about to talk facts. Welcome, Cowboy fans and Cowboy haters alike, to Let's Talk Cowboys, where we talk facts. I'm your host, the G. Let's get down to business. So I have 7 takeaways from the Dallas Cowboys beating the Las Vegas Raiders 27-12 in that preseason game. I want us to be very careful and understand it's preseason. And some of us may not even know what we're looking at when we're talking about evaluating players. Because when I start thinking about the preseason, I don't put a lot of stock in it, because when you think about it, when they were playing 4 preseason games, there were teams who would go 0-4 in the preseason. And some of those teams have went deep in the playoffs. Some have even won Super Bowl games. So the preseason is more about evaluating individual players more than it is, to me, evaluating the team. Because the offensive coordinators, they don't want to show everything they have. The defensive coordinators, they're definitely not going to show everything they have. What they are looking at is, do they have the players that can do the things that they want to implement? And especially as you start looking further down the road. And so in my evaluation of this whole thing with the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, I was glad they won. I'm always glad when the Cowboys win. But again, I want to dig into some details. I want to dig into some dirty details before people start getting in an uproar and making all these proclamations. So I want to get right into these 7 things, my 7 takeaways from the Dallas Cowboy victory. So the first one is, and so the first one is, and so my first takeaway is, Cowboy fans, slow down. Pump the brakes. Breathe. And let's understand, this was a preseason game. And the Las Vegas Raiders, I mean, they're really not ready for a team. I won't even say the Dallas Cowboys. They're not ready to play good teams yet. They're just not ready. I mean, I don't know kind of about, Gardner Minshew, and I think it's O'Donnell who he's battling for the starting job. It is blatantly obvious that they will be looking for a quarterback in this next draft. And even if they get a quarterback in the next draft, I truly believe that if Dak Prescott does not sign with the Dallas Cowboys, he is definitely going to be at the top of their list. He will be at the top of their list. I wouldn't even be surprised, but you know what? Let me take that back. I would be surprised. Trey Lance, I don't think at this point Trey Lance is a quarterback that a team like the Raiders wants to take, unless the Raiders are saying, we're committed to a total rebuild and we're going to be satisfied with going 7-10 or 6-11 or 5-12, because Trey Lance needs work. Trey Lance needs a lot of work, and I'm going to go into that much later. But I want us to pump our brakes on this preseason game, simply because, like I said, number 1, the Raiders aren't ready. Number 2, when I look at that first quarter, Trey Lance was struggling against that Raiders defense, and that Raiders defense isn't that good. He looked just like he looked the last preseason game where he played the majority of the game, but he could not get them in the end zone. So let's pump the brakes talking about how great the Dallas Cowboys are and how great they looked on offense when the reality of the situation is that it was a preseason game on both sides. And I would dare say that the Dallas Cowboys, because they've had a run of success over the last 3 years, except in the playoffs, but they're a good team. So, and Will McClay, I think his name is, Will McClay drafts really well. And so it's no surprise that the Dallas Cowboys second and third team, they're better than the Raiders. They're better than the Raiders. And the quarterback situation in Las Vegas, it's a mess. It is a pure mess. But even for the Raiders, we didn't really get to experience them full throttle either, I believe, on offense, because I think they withheld some of their weapons, just like everyone else is doing, because they don't want the money makers to get hurt. I mean, Devontae Adams wasn't even out there. Come on. So let's pump our brakes and understand. That's my first takeaway. It was a preseason game. Let's not put a lot of stock into that. But what we can look at is we can be excited about some of the individual play, some of the things that we saw from BB. I mean, this guy is a monster, man. He's like super strong. I mean, he will put guys down. He put one guy down and was able to even pick up the linebacker and block him. So a lot of promise when we start talking about different players. And that leads me into one individual player I want to talk about. My second takeaway. I think this kid name is Keemon Hall. He's going to be great. He literally flashed off the screen. I mean, this was a playoff game, but he was the player on the Cowboys defense. He wasn't playing like this was, I don't really know, what the intensity level is. I'm pretty sure there is some intensity level by people wanting to make the team. No, this guy wasn't playing like he wanted to make the team. This guy was playing like a starter. He jumped off the film. If you look at the film, he jumped off. This man was everywhere. His footwork is good. He's got good IQ. He was all over the place. His anticipation. You talk about tackling and how he covers. This guy's the real deal. And as a matter of fact, it was his pick six that really broke the game open to where once he made that pick six, it didn't matter anymore what the Raiders did, because once they got to the level they were at, it was pretty much over with the players they were playing. But Keemon Hall, I think his name is. The takeaway from that is, Cowboys, you got a decision to make. You have to keep that guy. I'm pretty sure right now that there are teams that are salivating and hoping that the Cowboys cut this guy loose. I wouldn't even risk trying to put this guy on the practice squad. Don't even risk it. This guy, someone's going to have to be cut. This guy right here, Keemon Hall, he has to make the team just based on what we saw last night. Third takeaway, let's talk about the running game. I'm still very concerned with the Dallas Cowboys running game. The same thing people are saying about Deuce Vaughn this preseason is the same thing they said about him last preseason. People were saying the Deuce is loose. We have to understand something. Deuce Vaughn is not a small guy. He's actually, when you think about, I'm thinking he's somewhere around 5'8"ish, somewhere around 5'8", 5'7", 180 pounds. He's not a small guy. That's actually a big guy for the size, but he's a short guy. And even though you can tell he's really shifty, my concern with him is still he's a short back. And even though I think he'll be harder for teams to see, it's still yet to be seen is that can he really be an NFL level running back? Especially to me, the kind of running back that the Cowboys need. They need a running back that can run between the tackles. He doesn't, I mean, I got to see a little bit more, but he doesn't seem to be that speedster that's going to get you around the outside like Tony Pollard could. Tony Pollard, to me, wasn't an every down back. He just wasn't. They tried to prove that he was, but Tony Pollard, I don't really think Tony Pollard was an every round back. Tony Pollard is a 2-down back. He's a bring in on 3rd down, but I'm gonna split him out into the slot back. I'm gonna bring in another running back, a guy who's bigger, a guy who can block if it's short yardage. I'm bringing in that guy to really try to take it up the middle or whatever the case may be, or between the tackles. Tony Pollard wasn't that, and Deuce Vaughn definitely isn't that. I think he can be a good maybe gadget guy for you. I think there will be certain plays that he will be able to run screen plays, but I'm still concerned about the Dallas Cowboys running game. And I'm actually astounded that the Dallas Cowboys are treating Ezekiel Elliott as if he's this superstar running back. You can call Ezekiel Elliott RB1 all you want to, but Ezekiel Elliott is not running back 1. He's not even playing in the preseason. I know what they're doing. They're trying to keep his legs fresh, and they're also they're declaring he's the number 1 back to the running back room. But I don't think Ezekiel Elliott is your number 1 back. Right now, your number 1 back is probably Rico Dowdle. And the question remains is, can Rico Dowdle, I mean, we've seen where he's had flashes, but what does he look like for an entire game? And we're not going to get a good evaluation of him during this preseason because they're kind of trying to do their running back by committee. And so they're only getting so many snaps. And if Ezekiel Elliott, I'm sure he's going to start out the season as RB1, and he's going to get probably 15 carries. So that still halves Rico Dowdle's carries, which for me, I think when you start talking about momentum players, you're talking quarterbacks. When it comes to timing, you're talking about wide receivers. They need to get involved early and often, and running backs. They need to have like stints where you're feeding them the ball. If they're that kind of back, you're feeding them, and you get them going. And when you start talking about running back by committee to me, it only works when you have these type of running backs like Pacheco. Because when you got a running back like Pacheco, I mean, it don't matter when he gets the ball. He's coming to hurt somebody. I mean, this man runs angry. And I don't think at this point we have a running back that runs angry. Rico Dowdle, I mean, we saw him last year. I mean, like I said, he had flashes, but he also couldn't stay healthy. So the question becomes, can he be that running back? But I don't understand this whole Ezekiel Elliott thing. He should not be getting handed the number 1 running back just because, and we know what it is. Jerry loves the people that he drafts. And so they drafted Ezekiel Elliott, didn't really want to get rid of him, but they gave him such a ridiculous contract. They had to do something so that they could at least get from under some of it. So it's insane, but they got Ezekiel Elliott. I think they're calling Rico Dowdle number 2. Deuce Vaughn supposedly number 3, but we're going to see the Hunter Lipke thing. I think they're going to still try to see if that can pan out. I think they're going to try to use him a lot as the fullback and maybe try to go back to the Emmitt Smith, Daryl Johnston type of dynamic. And this guy, though, this Hunter Lipke guy, he's talented, though. You look at his college tape, he's pretty talented. So it'll be interesting to see what they could use him for, kind of like a fullback / tight end hybrid. So I think he's going to make the team automatically. They're still trying to develop Hunter Lipke into the game plan. Then, of course, we got Royce Freeman. Don't know. It'll probably be between him and Deuce Brown and Malik Davis about which of them stay on the team. But then they got another guy, I think Snoop Connor. I'm not sure if he's still there, but whatever the case may be. My takeaway number 3 is I'm not convinced by the Cowboys running game. The Cowboys still need to be looking for a bona fide running back in free agency. They definitely need to be looking for a bona fide running back, because we're going to talk about this in a future video, but the Dallas Cowboys upcoming first 5 games, This is really going to dictate and tell us what they're going to be about. I'm not worried about the preseason. I mean, they're not even playing starters. So I'm not concerned about the preseason. The first 5 games for the Cowboys is going to tell us everything we need to know. What are they going to be this coming year? Takeaway number 4, Brandon Aubrey. Dallas Cowboys. Jerry and Stephen Jones. We know how silly y'all are with contracts. But I would dare say, do not even play around with this man, Brandon Aubrey. You need to get him a deal done now. This is arguably the best kicker in the league. He kicked a 66-yard field goal. Now, if there is one player that is bona fide from the preseason game that people should be excited about, it's Brandon Aubrey. He the truth. 66-yard field goal that would have been good from 70. Had it been regular season, I'm thinking he either would have tied the record or broke the record, whatever the case may be. Sign Brandon Aubrey now. We don't even have to talk about Brandon Aubrey. This guy is a bona fide superstar kicker. And we lucked up on him. And since we lucked up on him and got him, man, forget it. We need to go ahead and take care of this guy. Don't even play around. Go ahead, take care of this guy now. We're not talking about his contract, but we need to be talking about his contract. Get this guy signed even before next year. Bonafide superstar. Sign Brandon Aubrey. Takeaway number 5, Flournoy. Flournoy for the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to be fantastic. I think we're going to be looking at him not only deep into the season where he's going to become a factor. Jalen Tolbert, I've talked about it before. Jalen Tolbert, he needs to really make an impact this season because he can be the complementary receiver to CeeDee Lamb that the Dallas Cowboys need. But I'm not going to count out Flournoy. Flournoy is so extremely talented. A lot of people say he's kind of like Dez Bryant, but as talented, and I'm telling you, Dez Bryant is from East Texas. I'm from East Texas. And Dez Bryant was a beast. I think Dez Bryant, though, was done a disservice because they would not develop Dez Bryant in the way that Dez Bryant should have been developed. Dez Bryant was nothing but raw talent. There's probably not been but a handful of receivers that's ever been more talented. Strength, speed, size, hands. Dez was an absolute beast, but they got Dez Bryant to the point to all they wanted Dez Bryant to do was slants, go routes, jump balls. Dez Bryant was way more talented than that. Dez Bryant, if they would have trained and worked with him, Dez Bryant could have worked the route tree easy. He was super talented. That's why he was out the league way too early. And I don't fault Dez for that. I fault the Cowboys for that because I remember Dez even talking about that in the past. Dez Bryant was a beast. And I'm saying this because Flournoy got some Dez Bryant in it. He got some Dez Bryant in it. And I think he has the piece that they never developed in Dez Bryant. He's got the route running. And you got to think, we're in a different age now. I mean, even when Dez Bryant was coming up, Dez Bryant was raw talent. I mean, these kids coming up today, they're working with the footwork king. I mean, they got their own personal coaches they're working with and showing them how to run routes, footwork, and all kinds of stuff. So you can tell he's one of these new product wide receivers, and he's got the skill set. He's got the skill set. Now, I don't think he's quite the physical raw specimen like Dez Bryant was, but he's got some of that. And I think that this guy Flournoy is going to be an absolute beast. Just go look at his highlights. This guy's a monster. And he's showing flashes. He's showing flashes. And I'm sure the coaching staff is looking at it. Flournoy, shoe in to make the team. Better watch out. Flournoy might be 4th on the depth chart, and before you know it, he might be alternating in and out with the 3 and the 2 in the slot or on the outside. Flournoy, he's going to be one to watch. Takeaway number 6, Trey Lance. I talked about how Flournoy made it easy for Trey Lance to make the throw that he made. And I'm adamant about that. That throw was the easiest throw that Trey Lance had the whole night because that was 80% Flournoy. It was just a killer move. So he had no choice but to make that throw. But when we think about Trey Lance looked a lot better than he did the previous week. But let's understand how bad Trey Lance looked. So to say that he looked a lot better is saying, well, at least we know now that he can make the team. And I'm telling you, the saving grace for Trey Lance, I don't care what anyone says. The saving grace for Trey Lance is his raw athleticism. Trey Lance, when you look at him, he is a physical specimen. Now, let me take that back. I shouldn't say a physical specimen. He's a big quarterback. Cam Newton was a physical specimen as a quarterback. But Trey Lance, when you look at him, he's bigger than Dak Prescott. He's faster than Dak Prescott. But the problem is, he's not better than Dak Prescott. And I mean, the gap is large. Even though Trey Lance is more physically gifted, Dak Prescott has hit the level to where he's cerebral. He's cerebrally gifted. To where now, see, with Dak Prescott, he's been in the game for 9 years. He does a lot of study. He does a lot of work. The game has slowed down for Dak Prescott. And a lot of people, see, they love to hit the lottery, get a rookie quarterback, get him on a rookie deal, put players around him, go to the Super Bowl. That's all good and dandy, but that don't work for everybody. And so when that don't work for you, what you want to have a long-term quarterback. Because the only thing that happens if he's a person like Dak Prescott, he just keeps getting better. Because Dak Prescott last year had his best season as a pro. Even after people said he peaked, they thought he couldn't do any better than what he had done in the past. Well, he showed that he could. And yeah, he failed in the playoffs, but I don't blame that on Dak. Green Bay just had a great game plan. They knew the weaknesses of the Cowboys, couldn't stop the run, only had one bona fide threat on offense. All we got to do is run the ball down their throats, get the lead, stop CeeDee Lamb, and the rest was history. But Dak Prescott is a bona fide all-pro. He is. Dak Prescott is great up here. Trey Lance, all he has is athleticism. His legs are really his best attribute. Because when you think about his arm, it's super strong. You can tell. But he has no touch. Now, if you're talking about the deep ball, he got you. But if you're talking about timing patterns, leading the receiver, touch passes, reading the defense, that's not Trey Lance. That's how you win football games with the things that Trey Lance doesn't yet possess. And Trey Lance, he needs more reps. He also needs to sit down somewhere behind a quarterback and continue to learn. I actually think it would actually behoove Trey Lance that if he could actually be moved to a team to where they're saying that we're going to commit to a rebuild. And we're going to build an offense around starting out his athleticism. And we're just going to build. And while we're building, we'll let him get his reps in. We'll let him play 17 games. And we'll see where it goes in 2 years. And in the meanwhile, we'll be putting draft picks around him. We'll put a couple of veterans around him. We'll make sure we have the right coach in front of him, the right offensive coordinator, and make sure we have a strong defense on the other side of him. You can do that with Trey Lance because right now a team could get him cheap. They could get him cheap because he's not going to command 20 and 30 and 40 million even when he hits free agency next year. And I think that's one of the things that the Cowboys is hoping for is that he develops good enough to where if they don't pay Dak Prescott, then while they're eating Dak Prescott's salary, Trey Lance will be good enough to where maybe he can get them 9 or 10 wins. I believe that's what they're hoping. And so Trey Lance, I'm not going to talk bad about Trey Lance. Trey Lance just needs work. He needs work, and he needs a lot of it. He didn't play a lot of college ball. He didn't get the opportunity to play a lot of pro ball because his lack of skill showed in San Francisco because he couldn't even beat out Garoppolo. And even with all of his quote-unquote athleticism, the 49ers gave up 3 first-round draft picks and a third. Got a first draft, they some kind of way they got a first-round draft pick, but whatever the case may be, they gave up 3 first and a third. But even with his great athleticism, even when he got healthy, they chose Brock Purdy over him. And Brock Purdy, I don't think Brock Purdy is as talented. But I think Brock Purdy, because of all the time he played, Brock Purdy was a little bit better up here. And that's not a knock on Trey Lance. That is going to come with experience. And we'll see how much does come with experience. Some quarterbacks don't pick it up, but I think that Trey Lance has worked with Dak Prescott now a year. And he's watching how Dak Prescott does his business. And I think it's one of the best things that happened to him. Dak Prescott is a studier of the game. He loves the game. He's a great leader. He's a proven winner, MVP, All-Pro. This year, I think he's going to get over the hump, but we'll see depending upon how they set him up. Trey Lance needs to sit another year or get traded to a team that says we're going to rebuild. And we're going to rebuild around you, and we're going to put all these pieces in place, and we're going to be willing to take these growing pains, and then we're going to win. But that's what it's going to take for Trey Lance. And so that's what it's going to take for Trey Lance. Trey Lance did better, but let's stop fooling ourselves. Trey Lance is not ready to be a starter for the Dallas Cowboys, nor any other team, unless they're willing to go through the growing pains and go into rebuild mode. And that brings me to my final point. Cooper Rush. If the Cowboys don't sign Dak Prescott in the grand scheme of things, he's not worried. Dak Prescott is going to lead the Dallas Cowboys and hit the lottery if they don't sign him. Dak Prescott knows, just looking at the landscape of football teams and how teams are so desperate for quarterbacks, especially if they can get a good one in his prime. Dak Prescott already knows he's going to get paid. And I think Dak has resolved in his mind that he's probably out the door. But Cooper Rush, what is Cooper Rush going to do? Because my question is, my question is, what are the Cowboys doing with, and what are they doing to Cooper Rush? Because in my opinion, what they're doing to Cooper Rush is a travesty. What they are doing to Cooper Rush is a travesty. The Dallas Cowboys are basically stringing Cooper Rush along, at least it seems to me. Cooper Rush is number 2 on the depth chart, but he's not even playing in the preseason. What they're doing with Cooper Rush, he was 1 for 3 on Saturday. They only let him play a series. That's what you do for the starting quarterback. Some teams like Dallas, they don't let the quarterback play. But other teams, Kansas City, they won the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is playing. He's playing a series. Other teams are doing the same. Cooper Rush is playing a series like he's the starting quarterback. And then they're letting Trey Lance play entire games almost. Entire games. So someone's going to have to explain to me, how is Cooper Rush the guaranteed number 2 quarterback, but Trey Lance is getting all the reps, and the more reps he gets, the better he gets. And even if he's not as cerebral as Cooper Rush, because he's been in the league a long time too, if you ask anyone what they choose, Trey Lance or Cooper Rush, no one's taking Cooper Rush. And so it's kind of like, Cooper Rush, what's going on? Because it seems to me they're not even letting Cooper Rush play himself out of the position. They're not even allowing Cooper Rush to compete for the position. It seems to me that we're going to wake up in a week and Trey Lance is going to be the number 2 quarterback. And Cooper Rush is going to be the odd man out. Because are you going to carry 3 quarterbacks on the roster as inactive, or are you going to carry 3 quarterbacks on the roster and one of them be the emergency quarterback? I'm not sure if you can do that, but I'm thinking that you can. So what are they going to do? Are they going to dedicate? Are they going to dedicate Trey Lance as the emergency? I don't think they are. Because this organization, as I've said in a previous video, the one thing this organization does, the directions and the decisions are not made by the football people. They're made by the Joneses. And Stephen Jones said something one time that it always rings in my mind. He said the money stays on the field. And so when I think about the money they're paying Trey Lance, it's more than what they're paying Cooper Rush. And it seems like to me, they are still trying their best. I want you to scope Jerry Jones out. He's a shrewd operator. Jerry Jones just said, after watching Trey Lance from the offseason to the preseason, says he sees why San Francisco gave up 3 first-rounders and a third. I bet you Kyle Shanahan has nightmares about that. The players they could have got, 3 first-rounders and a third. I promise you Kyle Shanahan wish he could go back and say, I bet you there's no part of Kyle Shanahan looking at Trey Lance saying, maybe we should have kept him. There's no part of him. If anything, he's kicking himself in the butt going, we probably could have got Trey Lance for a first. We could just use our own first rounder for Trey Lance. And if he didn't work out, we'd have had them other 2 and a third. I bet you there are teams sitting back right now who are thinking, man, we wanted Trey Lance. We might have gave up 2 first round draft picks. This is not a knock on Trey Lance. But we're talking facts. Trey Lance hadn't played long enough. And San Francisco really did Trey Lance a disservice. Yes, he got paid. But as far as his career goes, I wish Trey Lance, because the kid is talented, I wish Trey Lance would have went to a team that's rebuilding. If Trey Lance would have went to a team that was rebuilding, a team that was willing to say, we got you on a 4-year, 5-year rookie deal. You're playing 3 minimum. You're playing 3 minimum. We're going to develop you. We're going to keep putting players around you. We're going to develop you. When you get to your 4th year, you should be right on time. Then we're going to pick up your 5th year option. And if you're really good, we're going to give you a contract. Or I wish he'd have got the number 2 treatment. Put him behind a good quarterback. Put him behind a good quarterback. Could you imagine if the Cowboys had drafted Trey Lance in that draft and had Trey Lance behind Dak Prescott and said, we're going to let you sit behind Dak Prescott for 3 years. Dak Prescott's contract, it's a 4-year deal. And if Dak Prescott ain't Dak Prescott, or he doesn't have us where we want to be, you'll be ready, you'll be young, you'll take the reins. That's the situation I wish Trey Lance would have came in on. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that about Dak Prescott because, no, I think Dak Prescott is elite. I wouldn't want anybody to take Dak Prescott's place. But if Trey Lance could have got in that type of situation, put him behind. What if someone like the Seattle Seahawks could have got him, had him behind Russell Wilson? I mean, if he could have got behind an aging veteran quarterback, because for me, I'll be honest with you, I'm actually hoping that some team is watching Trey Lance and saying, let's see if we can trade the Dallas Cowboys. Let's see if we can give up a first-round draft pick for Trey Lance. I mean, we got draft picks to spare. We're in the rebuild stage. Why don't we pick him up? Why don't we pick him up? Let us develop him. Just like Jordan Love. They drafted him. He sat down for 3 years. Now look at him. Had a good year. Now he got the contract. Somebody needs to do the same thing for Trey Lance because he's still young. I'm thinking he's 24, 25. He probably needs about a year of development. He probably needs about 1 more year sitting down. He's getting a little old. I wouldn't want him coming in at 27, 28. No, I would get him. I wish he could go to a team, sit behind a quarterback for a year, and then let him take the reins. I wouldn't even mind. I mean, that's why I'm saying when it comes to Cooper Rush, what are they doing? Because if you want Trey Lance to be the number 2, then go ahead and let Trey Lance be the number 2. But I think the Cowboys are really weighing this out because they know he's not better than Cooper Rush yet. And they're hoping to fast track him in this development process to where maybe he can. But I still say, I'm not going to be shocked if he's a number 2 wide receiver. I'm not going to be shocked. I'm not going to be shocked if Trey Lance is the number 2 quarterback. Because Jerry is itching. I mean, you can tell he's seeing the talent, and he wants that. He wants that ability to run the ball with the quarterback. He wants it. He's been seeing other teams do it. He wants it. But the problem is he can't get the other part because you're going to have to live with it because, 1, running quarterbacks don't last long. Number 2, teams know how to stop running quarterbacks, especially in the playoffs. And if they can't throw the ball, accurately, because Trey Lance right now is not accurate, he knows there's no way he gets to 12 wins with Trey Lance. There's no way he gets to 12 wins. Trey Lance in the first 5 games the Cowboys have right now, Trey Lance couldn't even go 1-4. He couldn't. That's not a knock on Trey Lance. He's not ready. He needs more time. He needs more developing. So it has me wondering, what are they going to do with Cooper Rush? Because I really think they're doing Cooper Rush a disservice. I say cut him now. Cut him now. Talk to Cooper Rush. Tell him, hey, your agent, man, you can go ahead and start looking for a team if you want to. We're going with Cooper Rush. Because to me, if you're telling me what they're doing is saying, Cooper Rush, you have sold up the number 2 quarterback position. So we're letting Trey Lance play because we want to develop him. But what are you developing him for? Are you developing him for the emergency quarterback position? Or are you developing him because we still want to use him against Dak Prescott as much as possible to say, well, if you don't sign, we'll just go with Trey Lance next year. I don't really know what they're doing in that area, but it's obvious that Trey Lance can't touch Dak Prescott. But it doesn't mean they can't still say, well, Dak, if you don't want to sign, we got our quarterback of the future. And so it's like, are we telling Cooper Rush? Cooper Rush, Trey's the quarterback of the future. Or are we saying we're letting him play to showcase him in case, see if we can get a draft pick back for him because we're going to sign Dak and then we're going to get a draft pick for him. Because if you're not saying those two things, Trey Lance is going to be the number 2 quarterback. There is no way they're doing what they're doing if they're not telling Cooper Rush those 2 things. Cooper Rush, They're not even letting you compete for the job. They're giving Trey Lance your job. And it's not based on training camp, because from everything I've been told, he stunk in training camp. Cooper Rush had nothing to worry about. But as I'm watching these preseason games, the one thing I know about Jerry Jones, he loves the court of public opinion. He wants people talking about Trey Lance, because the more they talk about Trey Lance, the more leverage, or he wants to get some leverage against Dak. But I'm sorry, I love Dak Prescott's situation. There's nothing that Jerry can do. There's nothing he can do, because Dak don't care at this point. I don't think in my mind, I don't think Dak cares, because Dak knows his value. That's the one thing I love about Dak Prescott. He's always bet on himself. Dak knows his value. He knows what he did last year. He's not dumb. And Dak also not dumb. He knows the reason why he's losing. And I'm convinced that Dak Prescott is convinced that he is not the reason that they lost to the Green Bay Packers last year. We can give him some blame in that 23-17 debacle in the first playoff game against the 49ers. But I'm telling us, Dak isn't worried. But Cooper Rush needs to be. Because the Cowboys are basically going to hand him the job. Because if not, again, what are they going to do? Are they going to make Cooper Rush the third active or third emergency? Because at this rate, I would be shocked if they made made Trey Lance the third emergency quarterback. Because I got a sneaky feeling that Jerry Jones is going to pressure Mike McCarthy into some kind of way getting Trey Lance on the field this season. They're going to get him on the field. I won't be surprised if they do some kind of Trey Lance lining up in the slot, throwing it to Trey Lance throwing it down the field. Then that's going to turn into throwing it to Trey Lance. He going to fake it like he going to throw it down the field. He going to run down the field. They going to put him in on some kind of goal line or some kind of trick play where he's going to fake hand it off and he going to do the read option. I would not be surprised if Jerry and Steven are already scheming, telling Mike McCarthy, we want Trey Lance on the field, because they love the controversy. And the moment they put him on the field and the moment he does something great, it's just going to cause more and more attention. That's why, for me, I said in a previous video, Dak Prescott lead the Dallas Cowboys. Pure and utter nonsense with the things that they do. But that's why I'm glad. Dak Prescott is in the perfect position. He's not worried. But again, my seventh takeaway, Cooper Rush. What are they doing with you? Good talking to you, Cowboy fans. Until the next time, let's talk Cowboys, where we talk facts.